Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out our recording of our most recent online engagement forum for Te Tupu Ngā Tahi Supporting Growth, our deep dive into Mill Road. My name is Carl Ferguson, and I'm the engagement lead for Supporting Growth. And shortly, you will see that I facilitate a session alongside two of our project staff. So in particular, Emma Fisk, who's the project lead for the South for Supporting Growth, and also the project lead for Mill Road, and also Deepak Rama, who's the principal transport planner for Wakakutahi NZ Transport Agency. And alongside me, they do a really good job of answering a whole bunch of questions that people have about the project and what we're doing and why. So I hope you find it informative. If for any reason you find in the session that your question isn't answered, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at info@supportinggrowth.nz. That's info@supportinggrowth.nz. And look, we will be having some online engagement forums in the future, and we'd love to see you there too. Thanks again, and happy watching.
Being sort of condensed quite a lot, and we are now looking at sort of design and sort of consenting happening in the next sort of 2 years, and looking at really sort of construction start around sort of 2022, and hopefully with a sort of stage sort of completion around sort of 2027, 28.
And can you just tell us a little bit more about Wakakutahi, the transport agency's role in delivering the road, and also just who you're working with?
Okay. So the Wakakutahi's role is primarily as a sort of delivery agent, and we've been asked by the government to deliver sort of roading sort of equipment or asset, and what that usually involves is the agency working with its consultants to sort of design a scheme, and then obviously get consents, and then obviously work with industry in terms of then I guess tendering a sort of physical works contract, which a contractor will then deliver, and obviously the Wakakutahi stays quite heavily involved in terms of right throughout that process until it's actually completed. And then obviously we do inherit that road again in terms of sort of operation and maintenance.
Great, thanks Deepak. Look, if you're just joining us, we're just starting out with some questions that we know are common to the community, and we're going to talk in a minute to the questions that have been pre-registered, which you'll see that have been loaded into the chat. So thanks, Deepak. We'll just come to a couple of questions for Emma now. So Emma, we've just been in the process of completing a round of engagement in the South. What have we heard from people?
Yeah, so thanks, Carl, and welcome everybody, and it's great to see a good turnout here today so we can continue a conversation with you. So we've been really pleased to see the amount of feedback that's coming in from the community. It really shows that we've made contact, and we are able to hear the views. What's most interesting at this stage of design is we've been out with a range of options that we have been considering, quite broad options in terms of the range we've been looking at covering for this stage of design. And we've asked for feedback on what we're thinking of as our technically emerging preferred option. I think I talked about that last time in terms of we've done assessments to work out technically what option we would recommend. We've come up and heard a lot of feedback from the community on thinking about what you think of that technically emerging preferred option and whether or not you think there are things that would make other options have been preferable. What we do with that now is we're gathering all of that feedback and considering it, and in areas where there's a lot of strong feedback about what impact that's having on the community or things we weren't aware of before, we're pulling that together and doing, I guess, an assessment of whether that would change our decision making, and that's something we take really seriously, because we do need to understand all of the factors in these big decisions that we're making that have such a big community impact. So the first thing we'll be doing is coming back out and giving a summary on what we have heard so that that's commonly understood, and then we'll be taking it through a process of some pretty deep thinking about what we've heard and what we do need to do next. Look, that does tend to take a bit of time, firstly because we need to get the right people together and do some some technical assessment, and also if there are any decisions that could move the alignment, we will, the alignment being where we put the road.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for checking yourself on that. I assume everyone talks in alignment talk all the time.
Thanks. Any decisions we make have really big consequences for waka kotahi, for communities, and we'll be going through a process of making sure those decisions are really sound before we come back so that we can give the community more certainty. We have heard a lot through engagement about from the community that people are looking for certainty, and look, we really understand that when things are going to have such a big effect on people's lives, certainty as soon as possible is really important.
So I think what we're really hearing is that there's lots of things to consider, that there's always going to be a little bit of trade-off between time and giving people that certainty, but also having the opportunity to understand exactly what we're dealing with and weigh up those competing kind of considerations. And the other thing is that no decisions have been made yet about where the road's going, right?
We aren't, so we know that there will be a mill road. We have looked at a range of places that can be put. We're looking to narrow in that corridor, and as we do that, we'll be able to provide more certainty.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Right, so we're going to come to some of the questions that we've had previously, and apologies in advance if I don't pronounce your last or first name correctly. I have had a little bit of a go, but there's some interesting ones in there. So we're going to come back to Deepak for the first question, which is from Steve Budd, and I'm just going to read out the question. I know people can see, hopefully, the question on the chat, but it's probably useful just to reiterate. So Steve asks, what is the bigger picture for the public transport network plan rationale in terms of significant cost of building bus lanes on Mill Road? And then he's got a supplementary, which is, Steve says he doesn't disagree with the bus RTN, the rapid transit network per se, but there needs to be a bigger network plan, or investment might be better spent elsewhere. And finally, will it feed into Drury Rail, and if so, how? So that's to get through.
That is quite a big. There's a number of questions within that question. Great question, Steve. I want to tackle your second question in terms of bus priority lanes. So, in respect to that, we haven't made a decision. Obviously, we are still working on the road alignment or corridor, so that decision hasn't been made. In terms of priority, I guess we are still sort of evaluating what priority means. So that could also include, I guess, freight and also what we call high occupancy vehicles, which is having more than one, having more than one person in there and giving sort of priority in that respect. I think we also need to consider the Mill Road project in the context of, I guess, other sort of transport projects that have sort of been proposed in the south, which include sort of bus priority and upgrades to the rail network in terms of additional sort of tracking. And there's also the upgrade program, which also looks at the provision of sort of railway stations. So we've got the 2 railway stations that are being sort of proposed in the Drury West and the Drury Central area, and also in the at Pairata. So I guess to answer your question in terms of that whole network, where the RTN network does comprise both road, rail, walking and cycling, and sort of that sort of bus priority in terms of the PT network. So it's been looked at as a whole.
Grand, thank you. And we've got a further question for you, Deepak, from Christos Fotopoulos. Sorry, Christos, if that's not quite right. Do you have a timeline for this project? And just generally, rough estimates will be fine, he says.
So Christos, in terms of the timelines for the Mill Road project, what we are sort of proposing is in the next sort of year, sort of 2021, we'll be looking at sort of design and sort of consent work, with a view towards sort of a construction starting in sort of 2022, and a sort of staged completion of the sort of roading project from the north to the south by sort of 2027, 2028.
Grand. And now a question from Marlene Herbins for Emma, and we touched on this earlier, Emma, about certainty. Do we have any specific timeframes around the design for a Kawa Ave? I'm just thinking we might try and pull up a map just so we can reference a Kawa Ave for people who aren't that familiar.
Sure. So thanks for your question, Marlon. And we're very conscious that Okawa Ave has been identified as the technically preferred route for Mill Road, and that is going to have some impacts for the people who live along there. Look, in terms of certainty, we're planning to lodge, as Deepak said, we're going to lodge our notice of requirement in 2021, and that's when we'll be going formally to say where the road's going and what property we might need to look at buying in order to get that road to fit in. So that's when we'll have a bit more certainty, and we are looking to come back out later this year once we've done that next round of decision making and start having conversations with people who will be specifically affected for the property. So that's what our timeframes are looking like. I know that does seem like quite a long time from what's happening to my home perspective, and we're really do acknowledge that, and we're hoping to give you as much certainty as we can as soon as possible.
Thank you. And look, we've got two questions here from Kerry Chalmers and the second one from Brian Park, again for Emma, just relating to the Drury section of Mill Road. So I'll just quickly read those out. So Kerry asks, why would you not use open farmland for the new road, i.e. Cossey Road, as it has less impact on the existing community and it's safer being a straight road? And related to Kerry's question, Brian Park asks, why hasn't supporting growth given more serious consideration of alternative alignments through Upahiki, Drury that are less destructive, specifically Inua to Fitzgerald Road? And I know Emma knows Fitzgerald Road well. And Brian says this fits way better with staging of development. It still provides southeastern corridor and avoids displacement of the gliding club and many established lifestyle properties.
Sure, and look, this is certainly an area where we have had a lot of community feedback, and I have been out to speak to a lot of people in the community about these questions. I think the first thing to consider is that we are looking, as Deepak mentioned, at a network approach to the transport network for the south. So Mill Road won't exist in isolation. There will be other roads as well and other transport corridors as well. So if you look at that map you can see on screen, on the west side you can see the red line, which is the rail corridor, and on the east side the green line being the proposed Mill Road alignment. We're actually looking at other long-term corridors in this area as well, and we need to think about how this whole area will be developed, because when it is it's a future urban zone, the yellow shading shows where the future urban zone is expected to be. We need to think of what this will need, and it's not just Mill Road. So we're proposing another corridor as well, which was roughly halfway between the rail and Mill Road, which is the Opaheki arterial route, and that is going to connect the Drury train station up into Papakura, and we're looking at that being a bus, high priority bus route. So we have made sure that Mill Road is far enough to the east that it's not going to compromise the fact that we need Opaheki to the west as well. So it's not that we're choosing Mill Road instead of a road through further west through Opaheki, it's actually going to be as well. And in order, I guess, to think about why we need a number of transport networks through here, if we think about the number of people who will live in this area when it's urbanised, it is going to need a really large network to support that and achieve the transport choices we're looking to have. So Mill Road is going to be further to the east, and when we think about then where we put the corridor on the eastern side of that future urban zone, one thing we've really tried to take into account is that this is going to be a relatively high-speed route. We want to post it at 80 kilometres an hour because for the Wakakatahi's network, this road will work really well as if it can carry a reasonable amount of traffic. So in order to do that, we want to have a posted speed of 80 kilometres an hour, and we want to have not too many intersections or driveways along it. So we'd really like to have it so that the intersections are only every 1 or 2 kilometres, and what that means is it won't be stop-start the whole way as you drive along it, and that'll allow it to carry enough traffic to fit what it's trying to achieve. So then we look at if we're going to have that road with very few places where it's safe to cross the road and a high posted speed, what's on both sides of the road? And the philosophy we're working through here with our planning team is that this road should ideally not have intensive, urban development on both sides, because that leads to community severance and safety issues for people trying to cross the road from one side to the other. So when we're looking at residential areas with schools, shops, community facilities, having an area on one side of the road trying to connect to communities on the other side of the road, it leads to safety issues, and also leads us to have to do things like reduce speeds, which affect the ability to get really that strategic capacity that we're looking for.
So in other words, we have to make sure the road is actually going to deliver what we need,
Yes, that's right.
but also work for the community in terms of how people live.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl.
Cool. So we'll come back to Deepak. This hopefully is a fairly straightforward question. So from Suhai Rizwi, is Thomas Road or its properties in any way affected by the plans listed here?
Right, yeah. In terms of the Mill Road alignment, I can sort of say no, it's not affected. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I think that's great. And so just the key thing there is in relation to this project, there's nothing in scope for this road.
No.
Cool. Back to Emma from Sue Godbaz. What is the detail? Sue is asking, tell us more about the detail of the corridor near Dominion and Red Hill Road.
Sure, thanks, Sue. So for the Dominion Road corridor, it is a really challenging section for Mill Road because it's an existing residential community. So that's an area we do need to look at how we can maintain community connectivity and safe speeds and crossing points. We have looked at the community facilities in the Red Hills area, and we are talking to Red Hills School, and we're really conscious that there's a school on the east side of Dominion Road, and we've got the park and also community facilities on the west side of the road. In the Red Hills area, we have considered coming offline, which is a new road that's not right next to the school and the Red Hills community, and leaving some of the existing Dominion Road in place operating. And that's something we're working through. That is something that I think is our recommended option that we'd like to come and talk to the school about and pursue further. The idea being that we want to minimise that impact that we're having on the school community. We know that the kids are walking along that section of road. And so if we bring the new 4-lane part of Mill Road off the existing Dominion Road at that point, that enables that Red Hills community to remain connected. We also know from talking to Auckland Transport that there's a bus route through the Red Hill area that comes down through Settlement Road to connect into Papakura, and we're looking at keeping that open so that we've got that connectivity and the buses still run the way they do now.
And that's a really important
Hope
point,
that
just
answers
about
that question.
kind of understanding how people are using the area at the moment, and just making sure that that's well understood. And look, if you're just joining myself and Emma and Deepak now, so we're just working through the questions that have been pre-registered, and we're just coming to a question again for Emma from Joe Gallagher. So if you're following us on the chat. So Joe just asked, could you please provide more detail on the impact of the properties immediately to the east of the Auckland Gliding Club, south of Old Barn Road and north of Appleby Road? So just before we come to Emma, so for those of you who are with us, we do have a map up there. There's a couple of technical challenges in trying to kind of pinpoint this on the map, so I hope you can follow that okay. But yeah, Joe's question, Emma.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Look, we've looked at a number of options in this area. As you can see, the area between Appleby Road and Old Barn Road with the Gliding Club is a point at which we've got the future urban zone on the left. I hope you can see the map with the yellow shading. And on the east, we've got countryside living in this rural environment that will remain rural. So what we're trying to do with the alignment in this area is allow Mill Road to form a boundary between that future urban zone that will become residential housing on the west and the remaining countryside living community on the east. As I said earlier, we're still working towards being able to give you certainty on exactly what the impacts will be, and we will be able to give you that. We're looking to confirm that as soon as possible. I think at this stage we are looking to have the road coming down that boundary of the future urban zone, and as far as possible reduce the impact on the houses that remain on the right hand side, on the east side. So there will be some houses affected in this area, and we'll be talking specifically to the people who are affected. But I think from a design philosophy perspective, what we're trying to do is keep the road away from those countryside living areas and define that future urban boundary. We do need to confirm our preferred option through here, and we've had a lot of community feedback in this area that we're going to go and look at and check the decision making, and we'll need to do that before we can provide more certainty on how we impact those individual properties.
Thanks, Emma. And just a follow up for you from Paul Southend. So Paul is asking for a bit more detail about the intersection between Mill Road and Hanua Road.
Sure, and this is, I see that there's a new question coming through as well, which is coming off Dominion Road in the Red Hill region as well. So I think those two are linked. So what happens in the area of Papakura around Hanua Road, and also what happens in the Red Hill area. So if we look at Papakura, in the Papakura section, we have got, Papakura has in the, if you can see the map now, the yellow shaded area is the existing residential area in Papakura, and the grey area, which is more to the south, is that existing industrial area in Papakura. And so they are that technically preferred alignment that we're looking at, the green line through there, it comes through the residential area to the north and then through the industrial area to the south. And at about the halfway point, you've got Settlement Road. So that's where Kerry Down Park is. So we are looking to follow Dominion Road through the residential area, because if we keep the existing road corridor, that does reduce the impact we have on the number of houses that are affected. But as we come to the south and we get into that industrial area, we're looking to see if we can get the alignment to work by coming offline, which means to the west through the industrial area.
So that's away from the existing road?
Yeah, away from the existing road to the west, because the existing road serves the school, and it's also a very windy road with native trees on the east side. So what we're looking to see if it can work is you'd come south, you'd be on Dominion Road coming from Settlement Road, and at about Croskery Road, just after the Red Hill Community Centre, you'd come off to further to the west, and that would lead the existing road behind, connecting to Mac Place, and keep that existing road connecting to the school and the residential area there. So it's a little bit hard to explain. I kind of want to draw a picture, and I'm pointing at the map.
We're a little bit limited by the medium, unfortunately, but thank you for your clarification and question there, Anna. And
so what I didn't point out is at Hanua Road as well. Sorry,
yes, which was the original question. Yeah,
and
which is what Paul actually asked. So we should cover that off.
I'm sure we can provide some written clarification as well, so we can check that this is making sense. At Hanua Road, we are looking at having a new intersection. It's most likely a roundabout connecting Mill Road in the north in Papakura across to the south through the Drury section and connecting to Hanua Road, which accesses the Papakura industrial area and also connects to Hanua Road, which leads into the Hanua Ranges.
Great, and while you're on the roll, Emma, so we've got a question here from Bruce McKee. So Bruce would like to understand a bit more about option A and how it leaves Cosgrove Road and S-shaped road into Okawa Ave, and a lot of future residential land, which is obviously more expensive than rural land, Bruce points out. So it is quite a long question, but the key thing here is just really thinking about the consideration we've given to Awakiri wetlands and what would be the most cost-effective way to build a road.
And we've had quite a lot of feedback in this Takanini section of Mill Road about the disruption that building the road online might cause, and also some feedback about flooding and community impact. So we're giving that a lot of thought, and we know that the developments, the new subdivisions in the south part of that Takanini section are being built really quickly. And I'm sure if you've driven that road recently, you'll see all the subdivisions being built in that area. So yeah, it's a really good suggestion there about taking the road offline a bit further north, and that's something we're looking at getting to work, because what that means we can do is build that new roundabout, a new connection in a way that doesn't impact so much on Cosgrave Road, and that's actually an idea that we're pursuing further. And we're also talking to Healthy Waters in this area. So the Awakeri Wetland Project is a really large-scale stormwater treatment and conveyance project. The wetlands are going to be lovely. They've got paths alongside them, there's great landscaping, and they are really about where the D is on that map. You can see there's a large wetland and treatment facility there. But we've talked to Healthy Waters. They know Mill Road,
part of Auckland Council.
part of Auckland Council, yep. And they know Mill Road is proposed, and we are looking to really integrate and work well together. We don't think we're going to have any impact on what they're building there, and they are expecting to have the treated stormwater from Mill Road going into that wetland, so it's looking integrated. In terms of the impact on that future urban zone there, we're really conscious that a diagonal road through a residential area is not great.
Not ideal.
Yeah, and we've looked at some alignments, and by coming by leaving the existing Mill Road a little bit further north towards Walters Road, we can actually get a better alignment through there, and that's something we're looking at through this design refinement. And I think all the feedback we've had in that area about keeping the existing road open and how busy it is and how much traffic it carries is all really helpful.
Yeah, great, thanks. So we'll let Emma catch your breath, and we'll come back to Deepak. We're up to, for those of you who are following us in terms of where we're at with the questions that have come through, we're up to a question from Ben Ross. So Ben says, as the saying goes, one more general lane never fixes it, in brackets induced demand. Can you give us a detailed breakdown of analysis if Mill Road will be 2 general lanes and 2 managed lanes like State Highway 20B?
Sure. Great technical question, Ben. I think I'll answer it in sort of 2 stages. The first question around induced demand. In terms of the Mill Road project or road, we have to consider it in the context of, I guess, the wider sort of transport projects that are being considered for the area, over that sort of 30-year time horizon. So, and that does include, like I said previously, giving priority for public transport and rail and also walking and cycling in that respect. I think we also have to consider that rail is going to play a sort of significant role in terms of transport choice in the area. With, like I said, the proposal for sort of additional sort of tracking and the sort of rail stations proposed at Drury and Pairata. So when you look at it in that context, where we are sort of looking at sort of, the rail actually having a sort of 35% sort of shift in terms of public transport current, as opposed to the 7% that currently sort of it sort of occupies or the patronage to date. And so when you consider, the package, it's both sort of rail, it's road, it's public transport, and it's walking and cycling. And so I think that's how we sort of mitigate, I guess, the induced demand you're talking about. I do appreciate that Mill Road is the first sort of taxi off the rank, but when you look at it in light of the context and the 30-year program, it is really quite a sort of balanced sort of program in terms of covering all sort of modes in that respect. In terms of the question around priority, as I mentioned previously, we're still currently evaluating, what does priority mean for Mill Road? We haven't come to a conclusion on that, and in terms of looking at all the benefits and what is the right type of sort of priority. Like I said, it could be PT, it could be high occupancy vehicles, and it could also be freight, because obviously freight also plays an important role in the area.
Thank you, Deepak, and thanks also for your question, Ben. So look, just a little note to the audience. So some of you are telling us that you can't see the chat. Rest assured we can. A little technical glitch there. So we are getting your questions, and we're going to come to the questions from this session in just a moment. But as I said, we can see them and do keep them coming. So Emma, just to round out the questions that were pre-registered, so we've got 2 more. This next question is from Steve Airy. He says, What is the width of the new road along Drury Hills road section, and when will land be designated? So we kind of have touched on that, but it's probably useful just to give a bit more context around what the actual road is going to look like.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the question, Steve. So in along Mill Road, it'll be a 4-lane road, and it will also have an active modes corridor. What does that mean? It means walking and cycling, basically. So we'll have paths for walking and cycling on both sides of the road. The cross section, so the width of Mill Road from fence to fence, as it were, would be about 30 metres. And that's about what we need to fit in those 4 lanes of road, the walking and cycling facilities, and things like that, the grass verges. There'll also be width required as well for things like stormwater treatment and also for earthworks and planting and landscaping. So about 30 metres, but in some places it would be wider because there'll be other things alongside the road as well. In terms of the timing, the designation will be lodging the notice of requirement, which leads to that designation in 2021. Oh, and Mill Road North, that's been through the designation process, as Deepak mentioned, back in 2016.
Grand, thank you. And one further question for you, Emma, from Mark Gualame. So what is the time frame for reviewing feedback? We touched on this earlier on, and when will we advise the community if their feedback has changed the preferred options or if they remain the same?
Yeah, sure. So we've been reviewing the feedback all the way through the engagement period that we've been having, and we are continuing to do it. What we are doing now is really grouping the feedback we've received to parts of the alignment, part of the sections of Mill Road, so that we can review it and check our decision making. We're doing that now. We can share that information on what we have received quite soon. And as I said earlier, the process for making the decisions, balancing all of the different variables and then checking in that we've made the right decision does take a bit longer. So we're likely to come back later in the year to confirm what decisions we have made to move forward with.
Thank you, Emma. So look, we're coming to now where we're at with the kind of live chat. And it says a question there from Daniel, which I don't think we've had a chance to address yet. And I also note just through the chat that there are a couple of questions coming through about individual properties. So look, we're not going to start talking about individual properties in this live chat session, but we are really happy to have a conversation with you separately or offline. So do please email us and we'll come back to you directly. So Daniel just says, at which end of Mill Road is the project likely to start? Does that sound like one for you, Deepak?
Well, I think it is one for me. Thanks for the question, Daniel. It's actually a bit early to say at this stage. Like I said, we're currently we're in the sort of design and sort of consenting phase. We'll really only know around that staging and sort of the geographical extent of when, what area will start in first. Once we've sort of completed that and we ask for tenders from contractors who are going to build it, and they'll give us a sort of program in terms of how to build it and sort of in what stages. So that's still about 2 years away. Like I said, once we're in that sort of construction phase and the contractor has come on board, he'll give us a better understanding of how actually to build it and where we should be starting.
And will that have an impact at all on how properties might be purchased in the future, or it doesn't work?
I mean, obviously we will be in negotiation with landowners around purchase. We will look at it in relation to the amount of the amount of properties that need to be taken. It will have a bearing, I guess, in terms of program. But like I said, Carl, it's still quite early to understand. Well, how much property you need, and where is actually the best place to start.
Thank you, Deepak. And so, look, Megan has just got a comment and a question. She says if it's not rural, it's not rural if it's on a 4-lane highway, and a lot of properties are zoned rural will be right on the border of the 4-lane highway. So is that something you want to touch on, Emma?
Look, Megan, we have talked to people along this area, and look, we acknowledge that this is a really big impact on the rural area, and particularly in the Drury section where there's a lot of lifestyle properties. And in the big picture about what Mill Road is intending to do to achieve for Auckland, we think Mill Road is really important for the growth of Auckland and for houses and for the region. So we think it's a very important thing for the wider community, and yet we know that balanced against that really wider importance, for some people the impacts are really severe, and look, we really acknowledge that for individual homeowners who live alongside where this road corridor is going, particularly if you're remaining in the rural zone, and the impacts are going to be really significant for you. And we acknowledge it, we're taking that into our thinking and our decision making, and we will be thinking about what can be done in terms of mitigation for the road. And just that, we're super keen to keep talking and keep those conversations going, so please keep the feedback coming. We're very happy to keep talking.
Thank you. And look, we're going to come to a question now from Joanna. I'm not sure who's best placed to answer this question, but what is the expected land footprint for the Ponga Road, Mill Road intersection roundabout, and which would include 2 lanes, traffic, cycle lane and walkway and runoff? Emma's jumping at the chance to answer that one. Thanks, Joanne.
Well, I don't know if I've got quite the answers yet, because it's really tricky. So to get to that next level of design detail, we are going to need to close out the feedback we've had from this round of talking to the community and confirm the alignment. Look, in terms of what we do know is that we're looking to have a roundabout at Ponga Road that will connect to the local road network, and that we'll have the Mill Road through this area is going to be 4 lanes with walking and cycling, and that the walking and cycling paths will need to cross the side roads where there is a roundabout. So in terms of the overall width, I think that 30-metre width for Mill Road does get wider when we get to roundabouts, and we need to work out exactly how those local roads will tie in. We're also looking at what safe crossing looks like on those for the walking and cycling paths along and where we cross in at the side roads. So look, that next level of design detail and exactly what the footprint looks like, we'll be coming to that later in the year once we've confirmed our recommended option. And the overall width will have all of those things in it. There will also be things like stormwater ponds, so we'll be designing wetlands to treat the runoff from the road so that when we discharge that water into the local streams, we're not going to make the water quality any worse. So there's things like that as well.
And flooding is an ongoing consideration, isn't it, for
it
the
is.
area we're talking about?
Yeah, particularly through, well actually all the way through this area, there are floodplains coming down from the hills and heading out to the Manukau harbour. So we're working to get a real understanding of which properties have flood areas in them. That's something we've heard a lot from people who live there about what areas are prone to flooding and what we can do to make sure we don't make anything worse.
Thank you. And look, there's a follow-up here for Deepak from Daniel. Daniel asks, what's the time frame for the notice, from the notice of requirement stage to the purchasing of properties?
Right, I might just go a step back, Daniel, in terms of the process we sort of undertake in terms of understanding what the property requirements are. So after this, I guess, round of sort of engagement, we'll sort of look at the feedback we've received, understand the issues in terms of those sort of local impacts, and then that'll sort of inform the design a bit more in terms of giving us some certainty. So when we've got a level of certainty, that's when we'll actually, I guess, come back to you or come back to those affected landowners and say, well, look, you know, for the corridor, this is what we need, and it does sort of impact on your property. Our preference is obviously to have a negotiated sort of settlement in terms of property requirements if we can, and you know that would be a sort of win and a sort of preferable sort of process for us. However, it doesn't always sort of pan out that way, and I guess in terms of your question around the NOR, the actual, I guess, the formal process does kick off in terms of property acquisition when we do lodge the NOR. And in terms of timeframes, it's a hard one. there's two processes. There's obviously the notice requirement RMA process that we will follow, but I guess parallel to that is the Public Works Act process that we will then also have to enter into. But I'm not quite sure exactly what the timeframes may be in terms of conclusion of that sort of Public Works Act process.
Thanks, Deepak. So look, we do have about 10 minutes to go, and I think we've more or less got to the end of the questions that people have asked.
Yeah, I saw one there from Jenny. I think we're not sure we answered that one.
Oh, I think there was a property,
Okay.
might have been a property
That's fine,
question
Jenny.
from
So-
Jenny.
So we can come and talk to you specifically about that.
Yeah, we'll absolutely follow up with you individually with any property related questions. So I'm just seeing a question here from Kyle. Right, bear with me. To what extent is the alignment of the corridor influenced by the rural-urban boundary and the rationale to keep development on one side and rural zoning on the other? If we look at the areas in Drury Flat, Manukau, and even Drury, land on both sides of these highways are future urban. Well, that sounds like an Emma question.
Yeah, I can keep talking this one through. Yeah, it's an interesting. It's been a point of discussion, and we are putting a lot of thought into this because it is a real planning, a question about land use and planning in this area. And I'll do my best to answer a planning question. I am coming at it from an engineering background.
We won't hold that against you.
So look, we do know that there are a lot of examples of residential development on both sides. And a lot of, if you look at the motorway through Auckland, that's certainly how it developed. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is something we would do again if we had a choice in terms of the impact on those communities. Because if you look at something like, State Highway 1 through Ellerslie, Green Lane and things like that, those roads do have a real severance. They divide two sides of the community. And yes, you can build roads between them, bridges and connections and underpasses, but that's kind of trying to fix the problem after you've created the problem. So it's an area where there's an aspiration to divide those residential communities as little as possible. There's lots of examples all over Auckland that haven't achieved that, and for various reasons they have been built like that or kind of retrofitted like that. So I guess if you look at Ellerslie Green Lane, the motorway went through well after the area was developed. And it has that impact on the local community, schools being on the wrong side from the shops, not being able to safely cross from one end to the other.
And that's a really key point, isn't it? I mean, I think what you're really saying there, Emma, is we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, just off the back of the unitary plan being adopted by the council, this is really about forward planning so we understand what those transport needs are in the future.
Yeah, and look, if you look down where Mill Road is going, if you look at the Papakura section, that's an area where we are behind in some ways where the development has been. So there's already residential development through that area. We know we're going to have impacts on the community. The kind of things we're looking to do to reduce the effect on the community, whether we can reduce the posted speed and whether we need to have more intersections and safe crossing points to get from one side to the other. If we were to do that the whole way along Mill Road, it gets to a point where it's going to be stop-start the whole way and you don't achieve what Waka Kotahi is trying to achieve in terms of getting a new road that really adds to the transport solution in the south. So yes, there are compromises that we can do, and when you've got an existing community like Papakura with the community facilities and the schools, we need to maintain access. Where we're doing longer term planning for the future, if there are areas where we think we don't, we can do things now that will reduce having a problem there in the long term, we're trying to do those now. And it is a really challenging one because look, I fully acknowledge there are existing communities that are going to be affected, and there are future communities that we can't hear from yet who we're trying to think about, and we are trying to balance all of these things up and make good decisions, and they're not easy decisions.
That's a really good point. Anything to add to that, Deepak?
Oh no, I think Emma summarised it well.
Cool. So look, we've just got a few minutes left. I think we have got to the end of the questions that have come through from the live chat. We've probably exhausted everyone. I appreciate there's a lot of information to take in. And we are really happy to answer questions that are coming in separately via our email. So look, we've got another question. It looks like from Steve. So I'm just going to read that out. So hi, says Steve, when planning for Mill Road, are you providing for grade separation? So grade separation means when there's two roads that are separated from each other at intersections, so it's free flowing. A big issue with current corridor is the roundabouts, the significant volume of intersections, and I think that was really something you touched on, wasn't it, Emma, about making sure the road is fit for purpose? And I think
it's a great question, Steve. What Mill Road is looking to be is it's not looking to be another motorway. So if we look at a motorway, it would be posted at 100 kilometres an hour, and every say 4 kilometres or so there'd be a grade separated interchange with off ramps and a bridge over so the motorway can run freely. Hopefully, not always. Sorry. Mill Road isn't going to be a motorway like that. It's not going to be 100 kilometres an hour with interchanges. It's looking to be more like mostly 80 kilometres an hour with some areas of 60 kilometres an hour, with intersections every 1 to 2 kilometres, and those are most likely to be roundabouts, and some might be traffic signals. So it's not it's not a motorway, but we don't want to compromise the type of road too much, because if we reduce the speed too much and have intersections every few hundred metres, then it will be stop-start the whole way. So it's about that balance. The key thing, I guess, for Mill Road is it's not trying to connect city to city like the motorway is trying to really connect Auckland all the way through to Hamilton. Mill Road's trying to connect suburb to suburb, but it's not a local road either. And so getting the balance right, and so allowing the traffic to flow and provide enough connectivity between the various suburbs along the way, that's the balance point we're looking for.
Thank you. And look, just in our last few minutes, a question here from Heidi. You're putting in roundabouts, and roundabouts can work well within our communities in relation to Vision Zero, but only if each incoming road is reduced to 1 lane before the roundabout. If you don't do this, you aren't able to make the commitment to Vision Zero. This project started before we committed to that, but you need to change tack on this. Is that something?
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to pick up Steve's second question first. So he's asked if it's a limited access freeway.
Yes,
I guess in technical terms, it's probably a limited access arterial. So freeway's a bit more motorway-like. Arterial has got at-grade intersections, but yeah, we're looking to really minimise the number of access points. So things like driveways, we're looking to reduce those direct access points.
And I think Heidi's question is one of the ones that has come back from the community, just really in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, so I can talk about it from a road safety perspective, and then Deepak, perhaps you want to provide that wider sustainability picture. So yeah, we're working with Auckland Transport, and we are talking closely with them about Vision Zero and the safe road network. And certainly on those local roads where we've got lots of people walking and cycling, we want to keep the Vision Zero of reducing the vehicle speeds, and knowing that vulnerable road users need low speeds in order to be safe. So that's the philosophy on the local road network. On Mill Road itself, being a higher speed road, what we're looking to do is then make sure we don't have those vulnerable people trying to be on the road, which is why we've got active, walking and cycling paths alongside it, and we're not having, pedestrian crossings unless we've reduced the speed. So key point then being how we cross the side roads, and yeah, that's something we're working with Auckland Transport on, and we're developing so safe crossing standards, working with Auckland Transport's road safety team to make sure we're putting something there that is safe for people to use. And the key thing really is keeping those vulnerable walking and cycling road users away from the high speed, high capacity road.
And Deepak, just in our last few minutes, do you just want to touch on the sustainability sort of
theme? Sure. So the agency is really sort of focused in terms of sustainability. And again, I guess with that, without repeating myself, like I said, the Mill Road is part of the solution in terms of the south. It's not the solution, and obviously with the walking and cycling, and the other modes of transport that are sort of being proposed, such as the rail and the public transport. It's a program of those works that I think ultimately, enables us to reach those sustainability goals.
Yeah. Thank you. So look, just to recap where we are, and I will just touch in a minute on sort of where to from here, but we're basically at a point where we've got a preferred route for the road. We've had a lot of feedback from the community, over 1,000 pieces of feedback, and we're just in the process of analysing that feedback. And the next stage, once we've got that feedback, is we'll come back to the community to talk about what we're doing with that and how it's going to change what we're proposing. And then the next steps would be to jump into...
Yeah, I mean, it'll be engaging with the community again and with those directly affected landowners in terms of, how the sort of design has evolved and what those potential impacts might be on some of those peoples that are sort of in the vicinity or sort of impacted by that design.
And just broadly speaking, in terms of timeframes?
I think we're still talking, say, maybe 2 to 3 months away in terms of, being able to digest all that feedback and then looking at the design and whether there's, opportunities to make those sort of changes reflecting those concerns and insights we get from the community, and then obviously going back.
And picking up there's a few more questions coming up in the chat. I'm not sure how much time we've got to delve into the details, so it sounds like we do need to come back. I just like, so Ben's asked if it's an expressway. Heidi's talking about more information on Vision Zero, and Steve's comment about arterials and the need to grade separate them. I think that really, between the three of them, they're really summing up that tension and decision making we're trying to make between at one end being really high speed and high capacity, and at the other end integrating with the local community and making it safe for the local trips. We're not doing an expressway, it's an arterial, so an expressway would have, I guess, grade separated interchanges and be higher speed. So it's not like the Waikato Expressway, but it's not a local road either. So it's that kind of, that balance point between carrying enough strategic traffic that it's adding to the network, but we're not a local road, and we're certainly not having, slow moving vehicles on it.
Yeah, I'd sort of categorise as a higher order urban arterials type of road is what it would. I know that's getting a bit jargony and a bit technical, really, but I guess that's the only term that comes to mind.
Yeah. And look, just on that, I'm mindful we are going to run out of time, and appreciate everyone's questions. They've been really helpful. I guess the key thing to note is that we haven't made any decisions yet about where the road's going to go. If you are a landowner, we will be back in touch, and certainly there'll be more opportunity for feedback and consultation before any of those decisions are finalised, and we're looking to do that sometime between now and the end of this calendar year. So look, just as we come to 1 minute to 11, just in terms of next steps. So again, fantastic that you were able to join us, and we really appreciate your really insightful questions. We hope that we've been able to provide information and answers. I know that there are a couple of questions that have been a little detailed, or where there's just a more general interest in the answers. So we will work behind the scenes to publish some FAQs. The other thing to note is that we will make a recording of the session available and then publish it on our website. In terms of next steps, so you will have seen from our invitation to the session that we are planning to have some further follow-up sessions. So what we have heard from people is they're really interested to know more about what's planned for rail, in particular the proposed railway stations, and also that people are really interested in Pukekohe Expressway and what that will mean and what the timeframes are. So look out for some more information from us in the next few weeks about when we'll look to hold those sessions. And look, finally from me too, we are really aware that there are a number of you who have said to us that while you're finding these sessions helpful, you would love to see us in your community. So rest assured we are in the community, and we are getting to know your community and your area really well. But in terms of the ability to have face-to-face conversations, things are definitely getting back to normal, and we are looking for opportunities over the coming weeks and months to be present. So keep an eye out for us at potentially local markets or sporting events, and we'll do our best to be highly visible, and we really welcome the opportunity to have a chat with you and hear more from you about what's being proposed. So in the meantime, I hope you're staying warm and that you've got a really fun and relaxing weekend planned. And we look forward to hearing from and talking with you guys again in the future. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Deepak.
Thanks.